I know that this sounds insane. Heck, if someone told me this story, I'd think that they were either lying or dreaming. But I swear to you, every word that I'm about to tell you is true. It all started about 2 weeks ago. I had just moved into a new apartment after a messy breakup. The place was cheap, small but clean, and I was just grateful to have a bed to sleep in, to be honest. The first night was when I noticed it too. Just as I was about to drift off, I had this odd sensation, like I was being watched. You know that sort of electrical prickle at the back of your neck? That eerie stillness that fills the room just before a thunderstorm hits? Well, that's what this felt like. I turned my bedside lamp on and looked around, but there was nothing. Just the usual shadows cast by the furniture, and so I figured that I was just on edge from all of the recent stress that I've been through. But the feeling, it didn't go away. The next night, it only got worse too. As I turned off the lights and lay down, I suddenly had this weird urge to look over the edge of the bed. I don't know why. I'm not a kid anymore or anything. What I mean is that I've long overgrown the fear of monsters under the bed. But that night, something just told me that I had to look. So, hesitantly, I leaned over the edge and glanced underneath. Nothing. Just dust and a lost sock, I think. Relieved, I laughed at myself and turned to lie back down and try and get some sleep. But as I rolled over, I caught something in the mirror across the room. I swear to you that I nearly jumped out of my skin. It was a face. It was barely visible, half in sort of shadow but also half lit by the street lamp outside, pale, unmoving, and staring directly at me from beneath my bed. I jumped up and switched on every light in my room, heart racing. When I looked again, there was nothing there, just dust, and I even got a flashlight, checked every corner, inside the closet, behind the curtains. I practically tore that room apart. I didn't sleep that night, and the next day I convinced myself that it must have just been a trick of the light. I was exhausted after all, probably just seeing things. I was very wrong though, because every night after that, I would see it. The pale face, always under the bed, always motionless, never blinking, and it never moved while I watched, just stared at me. It became a routine, in fact. I'd lie in bed, feeling its presence. I'd glance under and I would see it there, staring back. Then I'd curl up under the covers and just pray for sleep. I tried telling a friend. She laughed at me, told me that I needed sleep, maybe therapy, and quite honestly, I agreed. But last night, everything changed. I didn't look under the bed that night. I couldn't. I was frozen in fear, in fact. But around 2:17 in the morning, I felt a sudden weight on the mattress, like someone slowly climbing in beside me. Breath hitched in my throat. I didn't dare move. I didn't even blink. Then I felt a warm breath on the back of my neck, and then a whisper, "You finally stopped looking." Well, I shot upright, heart hammering, and started swinging. But the bed, it was empty. I turned on all the lights and nothing. The closet, the bathroom, under the bed, just silence and shadows. But then I noticed something in the mirror. There was no reflection on my bed, just the floor, and underneath it, that same pale face. But this time, I could have sworn that it blinked. "2 years ago in the winter, My husband and I bought and moved to a farm in a small town in Appalachia. It was late October, and in early November the weather had gotten chilly and pretty gloomy. Our stove and oven used propane gas as well as our small gas fireplace, which would allow us to drastically cut down on our power bill. So on a glum November morning, we decided to go down to our local tractor supply to buy a propane tank and fill it. As we waited in the checkout line discussing the tank sizes and the prices, a man, in his late 50s I assume, walked intently staring at us. He then turned to a woman's clothing rack that was located by the aisle, rummaging in it a bit, grabbed a woman's flannel, then turned back and stared at us some more, and started walking over in our direction. As I stared back at him and his approach, I noted his clean new-looking clothes and his well-kept facial hair. To my chagrin, he stood behind us in line. But he didn't stand your normal line etiquette distance. He stood very close, in fact. So close that I could feel his breath on my neck. I was extremely uncomfortable having a stranger breathe down my neck like this, but it is a small town, so I figured that everyone is nice, so I turned toward him, smiled, nodded, and said good morning, hoping that the man would feel as uncomfortable as I did, and sort of back up a bit. He didn't. Without even giving me the few seconds that it would take for me to turn around, he started a conversation. Initially, it started with pleasant small talk, based on the conversation that he had overheard between me and my husband. The weather is getting quite cold. This line is taking forever. Telling us about him picking up his great aunt from the airport in like 2 hours, etc. Then quickly going into more intrusive territory. Where are you guys from? Where are you living now? How old are you guys? The latter of the questions I luckily didn't have to answer because it was our turn at the register. For context though, I was in my late 20s and my husband only a few years behind me. Our baby faces could have easily passed for 20 to 21 at the time, though. I politely said, have a good day to the man, and went up to the register. As the guy behind the register started to explain their tank pricing, and filling pricing too, the man just started to flip out. I mean, he started yelling at this poor 17-year-old kid working his weekend job. I can't believe that you guys are charging them so much for a propane tank. To which the clerk responded that the price was market average. They're a young newlywed couple. Why can't you give them a break? At which point I said to the clerk that was not my issue and I would be happy with that price as it was cheaper than most other stores. The man behind us just kept going on though, cussing beneath his breath at the guy behind the counter, and he once again turned to us, and with an instant demeanor switch, and with an eerily syrupy sweet voice said, "Hey, I have a 100-pound tank that I'm not using at my house. I'll let you guys have it for free if you want. You'll just need to come with me to pick it up." My husband thanked him, but kindly declined. He kept pushing. "Are you sure? My house is only 20 minutes from here. You know, I might even have another 40-gallon tank that you guys could have too." Again, my husband kindly declined. He continued though, "We have to do it now though because I have to go to the airport and leave town in 2 hours." This was a slip-up that we hadn't noticed until we got home later that day. At this point, I had finished paying and said, "No thanks, we just purchased this one," holding up my receipt and a kind but yet assertive smile, I guess. Getting a bit impatient and annoyed, he hung the random woman's plaid shirt that he had in his hands back on the random rack that he was next to and aggressively stormed out the door. Trying to make the whole situation a bit less tense once the man had left the store, the clerk tried making a crazy old people joke, and we chuckled and we went outside. As we walked over to the outdoor section to get our tank filled up by one of the propane employees, the man from before pulled up into a parking lot spot next to the fill-up area in a pickup truck. The truck was old, but not a beater, probably late 90s, and the bed was filled with junk. Barrels, tarps, boxes, a tent, you name it. He got out though and looked at us and went back at it. "You should really think about getting a second tank, you know. It'll save you a trip and would last you longer." Before I could even interact, he continued, "If y'all don't want to leave your truck here, only one of y'all can just come and ride with me if you want, and the other can meet me at my place." With each y'all, I noticed more and more that the man did not have a typical Southern or Appalachian accent, and the usual warm Southern charm of the word y'all fell sort of flat. I once again replied with, "No thank you, we're good." And then he said something that I will never forget. "Come on, it's a small town. It's safe. I would never hurt such a lovely young couple." At this point, the propane employee came out of the outdoor area and told him to get the heck out of there and to stop bothering us, which I suppose spooked him, because without saying another word, he got into his truck and he drove off. It wasn't until talking to the employee that we all noticed the truck also had no plates on it. We still go to Tractor Supply often and fill up our tank once every couple of months, and while filling up our tank the other day, the same employee was helping us and he asked us about that day and if we ever saw that guy again. Because apparently he comes by in the winters when it's quiet and only talks to young couples, which is obviously pretty creepy. Junajet Castle is a 14th century medieval castle with various legends leading to its title of Most Haunted. It is open to visitors, but I believe in order to stay inside the castle overnight, you have to have connections in order to organize access. Well, in May of 2019, myself, my parents, and my friend at the time, we were 16, were given an opportunity to spend the night in this castle during our Poland trip, as my mum's family in Warsaw have some connections to some tour guides. Well, me and my friend being young and impressionable, my mother did not say anything about the castle being haunted prior to our stay, as it would obviously freak us out. We had no idea of the story surrounding the castle or the town. Skipping forward to late that night though, we were inside the bed located in the pillar of the castle and we were fine. Instantaneously though, a negative, or what I can only describe as a heavy energy, kind of anyway, entered the room and was imposed on both of us. It's hard to say without sounding cliche, but it was definitely a feeling of like impending dread. Like, don't look at your surroundings, keep your eyes on the screen sort of dread. We joked that this place must be haunted because we both got goosebumps at this shift of energy. No trigger that caused it, by the way. We both just had chills all of a sudden. What really made us feel uneasy, though, is that we both seemed to feel it at the same time. Fast forward a bit and we're watching more movies on our laptop. It's pretty late at this point, but while my eyes are on the screen, I just sort of know that something is looking at me. My friend proceeds to point out the spot behind the dresser, close to the entrance, and tells me that she's getting bad vibes and doesn't want to look in that spot. Weird, right? Now, the best description is maybe a shadow or a silhouette or maybe nothing visual at all that is standing in the corner of the room. The thing is, though, is that me and my friend could exactly describe her in the exact same way. A blonde, golden-haired girl, definitely a female presence, and very, very negative or sad or possibly angry energy. We couldn't see anything with our eyes at all, but we knew exactly where she was and what she looked like. I think the most uneasy part, though, was just the feeling of being watched by something that does not want you there. By the time that we kind of acknowledged her presence and what she looked like, me and my friend were on top of each other in bed because we were literally frozen in fear. My parents were in the master bedroom next door, and I could easily shout out something to wake them up, but we couldn't. Me and my friend were huddled together in bed, frozen. We were sort of nervously laughing, but really trying to avoid eye contact with this weird presence in the room. I'm not sure if she was angry at us or maybe just an angry or sad spirit in general, but we ended up just sort of blacking out in the end. We couldn't decipher any intelligible message. It was just kind of an intuition that this young blonde woman was there with us, and suddenly, all I remember is everything just going black. Well, the next morning, as you can probably imagine, we packed up and we left pretty quickly. I told my parents about our night, and they were pretty uncomfortable. What my mother didn't tell us until later, though, was that the legend of the castle apparently involved some story of a woman who lived there hundreds of years ago being murdered. I was told that she was thrown into the castle well. Other sources, though, say that she was killed in other ways, for which her spirit has never left the castle in order to protect something, or something along those lines anyway. I have found very few sources that go into detail, and I've never really read anyone else's experiences either. But I would love to know a few things from this experience. What are the chances of it being a real claim, being that there were 2 witnesses of it? Is the translucent figure, orb, or mental image, or telepathy thing sort of common for a human spirit? The story that we had absolutely no clue about, it also seems to weirdly match up with our experience, which means that it's either super coincidental or that there's something more going on in that castle. Also, my parents did not experience anything that night. They fell asleep early and slept soundly through the night pretty much, although the portrait across from their bed apparently kept giving them cheeky looks. It's hard to find any sort of information of substance about this place, so maybe someone who has heard of it before or has any info on it, unlikely as it may be, might be able to help out here and give us at least a little bit more information. So I walked alone down a remote area in Roanoke, VA today, and will never do it again. I've been followed and had random men ask if I want to ride into crowded cities or whatever, but that happens like twice a month max. I went on a 9-minute short walk with my dog this day, though, and I had 3 separate men offer me rides. I had men wave at me from their cars, and I was also chased by a homeless man. I was terrified, and the few tiny shops that I ran past were closed for Sunday. I was literally the only person that I saw walking during my entire walk. This homeless man, though, he spotted me in the distance and started yelling, hey, come here," over at me. I ignored him and I just kept walking, though. He stood up, picked up his bag, and started jogging after me. I picked up my dog and I started running. The man started to run faster too. I ran behind an old house, literally looked abandoned, and I hid there. Then I just ran into the forest area and I ran around until I found some civilization, a remote gas station. All these remote areas look like the set of a horror movie or a playground for serial killers, to be honest. If I did in fact run into someone in this wooded area, they could easily murder me and no one would probably ever know. I mean, there were literally 0 people around, 0 cameras, pretty creepy abandoned homes and greenery as far as the eye could see. That's why I was so freaked out when this happened. If this man had caught me, we would be completely isolated together. And quite honestly, I have no idea why he was chasing me like that. Additionally, one of the guys who offered me a ride literally turned his car around and drove the opposite direction when I said no. So it was like he followed me just to ask or something. He was actually quite young and handsome too, so another girl might have even trusted him and gone with him. The other men who offered me rides and the homeless man were all significantly older than me, though. I have no idea what any of this was about, to be honest, but Really, the amount of men that offered me a ride, and then the homeless man chasing me like that, I just cannot help but feel like there was something orchestrated going on. Anyway, I'm just shocked at how frequently solo men offered me rides, and as a solo young woman walking on the side of the road like that, maybe I'm being cynical, but I really don't think that it was just to be helpful. So this happened way back when I was a teen, and so the memories may be a little bit fuzzy. Basically, my family used to own a dog, and one night I took the said dog out to the backyard to let him run around and do his stuff. I went back inside and was going to let him back in soon, but then my brother and I heard him barking a lot. He usually barks like crazy for no reason, to be honest, so we were not overly worried about it. A minute later or so, I went back out to bring him back in. Usually my dog would not go in willingly either. I would have to go outside and yell his name a couple of times, and I was doing this. And it was this time that my brother suddenly started screaming my name from his window. So essentially, he was screaming at me to come back inside. I did this without question. I'd never heard him sound so worried before, in fact. I went to our room and asked him what was wrong. He replied with something that honestly chilled me to the bone, too. He said that he had seen someone standing almost directly behind me while I was in the backyard. And it was then that I remembered that I had accidentally left the back door open. So we got our mum, got a bat, and we went to the back door. We got our dog back inside and glanced around the backyard. Our shed door was wide open, which was unusual since we never used it. And earlier, my brother said that he saw a light in it as well, so what I believe happened was someone broke into our shed, when I took my dog out, that is, and at some point they must have heard the activity, and so they must have tried to leave or whatever. Also, a little while before this too, my brother swore up and down that he saw a man go into our backyard as well. I don't know if that was the same person or not, but it's certainly possible, right? I've never had something like this happen to me before, and so I thought that I would share it because, honestly, when you go through something like this, with some random stranger just sort of appearing in your personal space like that, it is something that is pretty terrifying.